If Dad's gone, the company's all mine, right?
Listening in disbelief at my brother's words, our mom, Patricia, responded,
Well, obviously, Daniel. Plus, if you do the math, there's supposed to be a sizable inheritance in Plan B. Breeze with Dad's life insurance. We could live large for a while.
That's like a bonus, Gotta thank our absent dad.
I felt like I was about to explode with anger. What's wrong with these people? This is unforgivable. I can't let them have their way. Just as I was about to yell, I got a call from Dad in the hospital. This story goes back a few months. My name is Christopher. I'm a 33-year-old architect working at a design firm. I moved out of my family home and now live alone in a nearby condo. Being single is a little lonely, but I love my job and live a fulfilling life every day. Today is a day off, and I had plans to meet with my dad. James.
Christopher, how have you been?
Ed showed up for a meetup with his usual warm smile on his face. Ed, long time no see. Have you lost some weight? Running a business must be tough.
But keeps me busy, but I'm doing well. Let's get going.
I occasionally meet up with my dad like this to catch up over a meal. Today, the taxi Tunstons invited me to join him for some volunteer work. We're at a small children's care facility on the outskirts of town.
Hello, Mr. Smith.
James. Christopher, hello, and thank you for coming to today.
We were greeted by the friendly face of the elderly director. At our completion, and Mr. Smith were chatting away warmly. Turns out my dad grew up in this facility. After leaving it, he put himself through college and started his own architecture firm. Once any relatives to rely on, he made it on his own efforts, and I've always admired him for that. But on his day off, Dad often invites me to volunteer at the facility with him. Since we both have backgrounds in architecture, we can repair furniture and playground equipment.
James. Christopher, you've helped a lot today.
After finishing our repairs on beds, chairs, and swings, Mr. Smith thanked us as we were leaving. I felt good about making a difference, and for Dad, visiting Mr. Smith, who's like a father to him, must be important too. As we walked side by side, pondering where to grab a bite, a sleek black luxury car pulled up next to us. The window rolled down, and out popped Mom. Driving the car was my brother Daniel.
Well, look who it is. Back from the care facility again, are we?
It's embarrassing to have a dad without parents. Can we stop this already? Mom, let's go. My brother spoke, chomping on his gum. I wanted to retort that he was the one who should be embarrassed, being an adult with no stable job and dyed hair, but I held back. No point in saying anything to these people. It would be a waste.
Daniel and I are going to dinner. You two can grab some fast food and don't forget to fold the laundry.
All right, understood. Listen up, Patricia.
Ed responded, and without another word, Mom rolled up the car window and they drove off. Dad and I just watched them go, saying nothing. Mom and my brother looked down on Dad, belittled him at every turn. Honestly, Mom might be beautiful on the outside, but that's about it. But the reason they can do all this is that they're basically living off Dad's income. They've been trash-talking him for as long as I can remember, saying he's a deadbeat from an orphanage, that he has no ambition or excitement in his life. They probably only see Dad as a wallet that listens to their every demand. What's worse, my brother Daniel eats all of this up and joins in on making fun of Dad. Our family has 2 kids, but Mom has always lavished her love only on Daniel. She's pretty much ignored me, giving Daniel whatever he wants whenever he wants. Thanks to that, Daniel still clings to Mom like a child. Even in his 30s, he still calls her mommy and lets her dictate even what he wears and eats. When I heard that Mom accompanied him to every driving lesson, I was floored. Dad, isn't it hard living with those 2? I asked my dad that question. I'm used to it. Besides, there's still family. I have to do what I can, Dad said in a lonely voice before heading back to the house he shares with Mom and Daniel. All I could do was watch him go. A month passed. I got a call from Mom saying that Dad had collapsed, so I rushed to the hospital. "Oh, Dad, what on earth happened to you?" And his dad, who looked even more fragile than a month ago, responded,
I got some tests done, and they found cancer. Apparently, it's pretty advanced.
My dad had been diagnosed with progressive stomach cancer. According to the doctors, he had about 3 months to live, give or take. Executions and never thought this would happen, especially since he's only in his 60s.
Why did you let things get to this point?
Because you and Daniel have been pushing Dad too hard. You know he's been stressed out.
Christopher, how dare you speak to your parents like that? You're nothing like Daniel.
And what is Daniel doing at a time like this? Think off gambling again.
While Mom and I were arguing, a Dad spoke up quietly.
Both of you stop. I'm fine. Go home for today.
And Dad, I'm sorry. I'll do that.
Exectorial, I left the hospital room, but between my worries for Dad's health and the shock of his prognosis, I couldn't sleep that night. After that, I took on the responsibility of bringing Dad a change of clothes and doing his shopping as he requested. Sure enough, neither Mom nor my brother lifted a finger. Still, I wanted to make Dad's time as comfortable as possible. I popped into his hospital room during breaks from work and took care of him for 2 months. Then, one day, when I went back to my parents' house to grab some of Dad's belongings, I overheard Mom and my brother talking in the living room. "Mommy, once Dad is gone, the business is all mine, right?" Stunned by my brother's words, I listened more closely. That's when my mom chimed in.
Daniel, it's not a given. Besides, if you do the math, there should be around $2 million in inheritance.
Wow, that's awesome! Maybe I should buy another car.
Why not? You'll be a company president, so you should drive a nice car. Thanks to his life insurance, we can live a little lavishly for a while.
It's like a bonus. Gotta thank Dad for not being around.
I felt like I was going to explode with anger. What kind of trash are these people? Unforgivable. I can't let them get their way. Just as I was about to unleash my anger, I got a message from Dad.
Christopher, can you come to my hospital room alone?
I managed to contain my emotions and went to see my dad. He'd lost even more weight recently, and his complexion looked bad.
Christopher, thank you for always being there. What are you talking about? Dad? Just tell me what I can do to help.
As I sat next to his bed, Dad began. There's something important I need to talk to you about.
I listened quietly to my dad, holding back the tears as I responded. Visiting hours are almost over, so I'm going to head out. But about what we discussed. Dad, just focus on taking care of yourself for now. Thank you. Christopher, we'd see you later.
In the end, that was the last conversation I had with my dad. He took a turn for the worse shortly after and passed away the next day. I held my emaciated father's hand in the hospital room and cried. My mom and brother also put on a show of tears, but only this time. Things got pretty tough after that. Mom was technically in charge of the funeral, but of course, she didn't lift a finger. Instead, she showed up at the funeral all dolled up in makeup and tried to cut corners on the costs. He doesn't even have any relatives. Why not keep it simple? Dad's co-workers and business associates are coming to the funeral. Don't embarrass us with that kind of talk. And today, while getting his necktie tied by Mom, Daniel chimed in. Just do what Mom says. Don't waste money on a dad like that. Daniel, just be quiet. If it's about money, I'll handle it. At least let me give Dad a proper send-off. So he ended up taking charge of the entire funeral. It seemed Dad was well loved by many people. Lots of folks came to pay their respects. That made me really happy. About a week had passed since the funeral ended. That's when Mom spoke up, now that we were a family of 3. Finally got that person out of the picture. Now the $2 million inheritance is all ours, right? Daniel, and Dad's company too. The man. I'm finally gonna be the boss. Listen up. Christopher, you better give up your inheritance. Got it.
And Dad's company, too. Oh man. I'm finally gonna be the boss, lay low. Listen up. Christopher, you better give up your inheritance. Got it?
Just after the funeral had ended, they were already talking about this stuff. Annoyed.
But Ted had already arranged all the inheritance matters with a lawyer.
And
So, I dialed the number on the business card that Dad had given me. Not long after, the lawyer who arrived was a woman in her mid-30s. While shaking hands and greeting the lawyer, my brother grinned and said,
why didn't you say that sooner? Call that lawyer right now. What does that mean? I was supposed to become the CEO.
that the one who raised his voice was my brother.
A damn outsider. Damn it.
My mom hurriedly chimed in.
The White? What about our money?
There should be $2 million coming in. Mommy, what's going on?
What are you talking about? We've already spent that on a new car.
Regarding life insurance. James had canceled all policies before he passed. All I know is that the money was used up.
Where did all that money go before he died?
Damn it! Was he planning to leave us without a dime?
I watched Miss Williams leave as my mom and brother lost their composure.
As she left, she said, "It's tough, isn't it?"
All I could do was give her a wry smile in return. I looked up at the night sky, recalling the last conversation I had with my father while walking.
Christopher, would you take over the company if I die? There might not be much in assets, but I should be able to leave you at least the insurance money. There should be enough of that.
What are you talking about? Dad?
You were the only one in the family who was kind to me. I wanted to leave something for you at least.
The dad? I respect you for building the company from scratch with your own hard work. I want to make it on my own too. I don't need the company or the insurance money.
But
If there's any inheritance left, I want you to use it as you wish. I'll help in any way I can.
Christopher, thank you.
Walking along, I realized I had arrived at the facility. Despite it being night, Mr. Smith was in the yard. When he saw me, he ran over in tears.
Christopher. James passed away so suddenly. He told me not to come to the funeral, but actually,
Mr. Smith, my dad was grateful for both you and the facility.
I just found out too, just a little while ago. James made a large donation to the facility. A really large one. Now we can buy the things the kids need. We might even be able to renovate. Thank you. But I wish James could have lived. I wish he could have been happy.
While comforting a tearful Mr. Smith, I found myself crying too, looking up at the starry sky. I whispered in my heart, "Dad, you did it. You really did it." Apparently, a few months later, I had occasionally met with lawyer Ms. Williams to handle the intricate legalities of transferring the company and settling the estate. This was to be my last meeting with Ms. Williams. After expressing my gratitude for her support, Ms. Williams offered her condolences once more, comforting me in a considerate manner. As I was seeing off Miss Williams, I thought about how I might never see her beautiful face again. She was such a kind and gracious person. Just then, as I was waving goodbye, a familiar car pulled up beside Ms. Williams, and out jumped my brother, wielding a metal bat. "Payne, what the heck are you doing?" I yelled and quickly tackled my brother. "Shut up. Let go of me!" His face turning red as I held him down to the ground. He was struggling.
Are you trying to attack Ms. Williams? What's going on?
What's going on? Because of her, I didn't get the company or the money. It's her fault. Damn it.
That's ridiculous. This isn't Ms. Williams' fault.
I had thought he was foolish, but this was beyond anything I'd expected. Was shielding a trembling S. Williams. I called the police. Later inside my brother's car, not just a bat, but also a rope and stun gun were found, clearly weapons. He was swiftly arrested. When our mother found out, she fumed.
You'd send Daniel to jail. Your own family. How heartless.
I replied calmly.
I no longer consider you or him family. My only family was my late dad. I'm cutting ties with the both of you.
Mom was still ranting, but I ignored her and cooperated fully with the police investigation. I later found out that my brother had also been repeatedly harassing Ms. Williams online, making vulgar comments and slandering her. The threats had even been made, and the police were in the process of identifying him. My brother was sentenced to jail for his attempted attack on Ms. Williams. She also sued him in a civil court for defamation, and he was ordered to pay damages too.
Please take every penny he has, if that'll make him reflect on his actions. I'm truly sorry for all this.
Upon my apology, the MSU Williams gave a faint smile and said, "I'll do just that. Thank you for saving me from a dangerous situation. But Tree, from now on, I hope you at least find happiness." Christopher, several months later when spring arrived, I found myself at Sakura Garden. Today wasn't for volunteering, it was a business meeting. Thanks to the funding from my father's donation, the aging facility was planning on a renovation. Mr. Smith had approached me for the architectural design. I initially declined, citing my inexperience, but Mr. Smith was unyielding. James always proudly said, "Christopher will become an exceptional architect." He's already surpassed me. We can do this because of James. I'd really like for you to take on this project. Christopher, but with sentiments like that, how could I say no? I want to create a wonderful building that brings even a small amount of happiness to the kids and Mr. Smith. I'm sure my dad would have been proud of that. As for my brother, well, he hasn't changed even after his sentencing. Actually, he's become even more irresponsible. Though he avoided jail due to probation, he still begs our mom for money daily, starts drinking in the afternoon, and gambles away what he borrows. My mom is being pushed around by my brother every day. But the large house we lived in, thanks to my dad, along with the car bought with insurance money, were sold to pay for Miss Wynn's, Williams' compensation, and my brother's bail. Now it seems they live together in an old apartment.
And told me she's lost her beauty. Looks more like an old woman now.
She brought this upon herself, but I hope she at least reflects on how she treated my dad poorly before he passed away and raised my brother to be such a mess. One last thing. I'm going to marry Miss Williams, the lawyer, soon. She told me in confidence that she felt attracted to me after I saved her from my brother's violent behavior. She's a bit on the serious side, but I really love her for her kindness and dependability. And from here on, I aim to work hard and be like my dad, building a warm and loving home. I won't give personal information to a fake mother. An unbelievable line came out of my son's wife's mouth, and I was speechless. My mind made up.
Even when I asked, "Won't you regret this?"
She replied with a mocking tone, "No way." Well, there's nothing I can do. I'm not a weak woman who cowers at words. You've crossed a line and you shouldn't have. My name is Mariah and I'm about to turn 60. I lost my husband and raised 2 children with all my might. Fortunately, I've loved Japanese culture since I was young, and that led me to pursue the path of calligraphy. became a licensed instructor in Japan and was able to support my family with calligraphy. Life is unpredictable, so the three of us lived in a small apartment without luxury, practiced frugal living, and saved money every month. My eldest son, Simon, was an easy child when he was young, but as he grew older, I felt his emotional weakness. My daughter, Liddy, unlike her brother, grew into a spirited and lively girl. My hardworking daughter earned her tuition through part-time work without relying on me, graduated from college, got a job at her first-choice company, and is working enthusiastically. Simon was indecisive, and at 35, he still hadn't found a partner. As I was worried, but being single for life is not uncommon these days, so I was careful not to pressure him about marriage. There are countless people who marry and become unhappy, so marriage does not necessarily equal happiness. Then Simon brought his girlfriend home. My daughter and I were curious about what kind of girl she was, but we were taken aback because she was so different from what we had imagined. Of course, we shouldn't judge people by their appearance, but she seemed to weigh more than the 132-pound slender Simon. Before Simon could introduce her, Gloriana said, "He kept saying he wanted me to meet his mom, so here I am today." "Nice to meet you." Normally, one would be nervous in front of a partner's parents, but Gloriana was calm. Also, it's common sense to call him Simons in front of his parents, even if you usually call him this guy. Am I just old-fashioned? When I served tea and cake, Gloriana ate the strawberry shortcake in 2 seconds, chugged the tea and said, "More, please." After some chit-chat, my daughter asked Gloriana, "What do you do for a living?"
Call me sister.
My daughter probably didn't want to call her sister, and I felt the same way. Is Simon planning to marry this woman?
What? I'm not working now. I had an annoying senior who nagged me, so I choked him from behind and I got fired. Virtual in credit card is too harsh, don't you think?
I was astonished, but I needed to teach her common sense as a working adult. Then Gloriana glared at Simon with a smile and slapped his shoulder.
Hey, your mom took the side of my senior. You're just going to stay silent in her pinch?
My son looked troubled and said nothing. I was worried about the future. After that, Gloriana often came to our house to hang out. She would casually open our fridge and eat ice cream, drink cola, and munch on the table snacks. My daughter and I were dumbfounded, but we hesitated to complain, fearing it would come back to us 100-fold. Eventually, my son moved out and started living on his own. Was it Gloriana who told him to live alone? Certainly, for her, living alone would make it easier to meet than living with his family. Take Zacharias. One day, as I placed a sheet of paper on the table and picked up my brush, my daughter asked, "What's this month's quote?"
What's this month's quote?
I used to write an inspiring quote every month and hang it on the wall. I wrote all at once. Be gentle as a spring breeze with people, and like a lion king against evil. Gloriana peeked in and exclaimed, "No way, that's incredibly good. You could be a pro." Nah. My daughter quickly glared at Gloriana with a scowl. She is a pro, I was pleased with my daughter's desire to show off that her mother was an important person, but Gloriana didn't seem to listen much.
I was forced to do it a bit in elementary school for cultural exchange, but I hated it. The teachers were so picky about the strokes. I wanted to throw ink on their heads.
Gloriana's handwriting is bad, so you should learn from Mom.
I think my son meant it casually, but at that moment, Gloriana glared at him with devilish, scary eyes and scolded him in a low voice.
If you say something stupid again, a drop kick won't be enough.
Don't get so mad.
Gloriana laughed loudly, looking at the ceiling while watching TV. And to put it nicely, she was powerful and hardy. To put it badly, she lacked grace. No, she was unreasonable, rude, rough, and crude, and I couldn't see her as a suitable wife for my son. I wanted to throw ink on her head. Gloriana was also overly familiar with my daughter, Letty.
Liddy, you're so thin.
Gloriana, have you ever thought about dieting?
I was taken aback, but Gloriana continued the conversation with a smile.
How old is Liddy?
I'm 28.
I'm 30. If you talk back to me like that, even though you're younger, I'll put you in a bulldogging headlock.
Bulldog?
Yeah, people often say I look like a bulldog. Are you picking a fight?
She might have meant it as humor, but neither my daughter nor I found it funny. One day, I called Simon home alone, and the three of us had a serious talk. Brother, I'll be clear. I'm against your marriage to Gloriana.
If that's what this is about, I'm leaving.
This is important. I thought I could trust anyone Simon or Liddy brought home, but Gloriana is beyond unreasonable.
That's not true. She has her good points.
Brother, you can't say anything to Gloriana, can you? It's pathetic. I had intended to choose my words carefully, but Liddy was straightforward. If your girlfriend is rude to Mom, you should warn her normally. You have to tell her to shut up if she complains.
You don't know Gloriana, so you can say that. If I tell her to shut up, I'll be in the hospital in 2 seconds.
I believe that a couple where the woman is stronger than the man is ideal, but Gloriana's strength is excessive. Marriage is not just a matter between two people. Both families become relatives. I had planned to treat Simon's wife like my own child, but honestly, I have zero confidence in getting along with Gloriana. A heavy silence lingered until Simon suddenly stood up.
What's this? Everyone's bad-nothing Gloriana.
Everyone? Does that mean your friends are against her too?
Yeah, they're all terrible saying things like, that's not right, and I'll just practice with her.
I couldn't help but think that his friends were right. A marriage blessed by many, including family and friends, is desirable. I wanted my son to reconsider, but he kept defending Gloriana.
You don't even try to see her good side, just badmouth her. I'm fed up.
But we're not bad-mouthing her.
Her parents are kind. They welcome me warmly whenever I visit, treat me to expensive steaks, and even took me to a 3-star Michelin restaurant.
I was as astonished as Liddy, but my son ranted on.
Compared to her house, being at home is painful. if all we can do is have depressing conversations like this. I won't come anymore.
Well, it seemed that Simon couldn't keep a secret from Gloriana, and he had told her that my daughter and I were against the marriage. Gloriana came storming into the house with my son.
I never dreamed that both mother and daughter would be bad-mouthing me.
We're not bad-mouthing you.
You're not the ones getting married, so stop interfering.
Her tone became rough, and I thought this must be her true nature. Gloriana started to pick on Simon too.
It's your fault for not speaking up properly.
When Gloriana needed my child's body, I finally yelled, "Stop it." People change when they meet someone of the opposite sex. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Did I make a mistake in raising my son? I don't remember spoiling him. The teenage and 20s are times to train the mind and body, so I didn't indulge him. If you grow up without knowing hardship when you're young and remain weak-hearted, you'll complain even in a privileged environment. A solely strong-hearted person can thrive even when adversity is a daily occurrence. I wanted to raise a strong child, but Simon is weak. Gloriana complained to Liddy and me one-sidedly and left Simon behind. When Liddy started blaming Simon, he lost his temper.
Fixed up Mite's a guy who takes his mother's side when his mother and girlfriend fight is the worst, isn't he? That's not good.
That's not true.
You don't care about how I feel, caught in the middle. Teach you enough already.
Simon left too, and we didn't see him for a while. Then one day, something I never imagined happened. A postcard in the mailbox. It was printed with "We got married," and there was a photo of Simon and Gloriana, smiling and arm in arm. Had they finally married? I thought they must have had a ceremony just for the two of them and decided to at least send a congratulatory card as a parent. The postcard strangely didn't include the address of their new home. I called my son. When I talked to Simon, I learned that they hadn't held the ceremony just by themselves. He said they had a grand wedding with Gloriana's parents, relatives, friends, Simon's friends, and colleagues. I felt weak all over, and my knees began to tremble. Do you realize what you've done?
And if you're going to lecture me, I'll hang up.
Without letting me know, they held the ceremony without inviting any relatives from the groom's side. Images of my relatives flashed before me, and I felt sad. I can't explain why I didn't invite them to Simon's wedding, and I can't face them anymore. Didn't Gloriana's parents object, thinking it was too much? An unreasonable child from unreasonable parents. But something inside me began to crumble. Then Gloriana came on the phone. Put your hands on your chest and think hard about why you weren't invited to the wedding. But I'll take the card. I want to bring wedding and moving gifts to your new home, so please tell me the address.
I won't give personal information to a fake mother.
An unbelievable line came from my son's wife's mouth, and I was speechless. My mind made up. Even when I asked, "Are you sure you won't regret this?"
She replied with a mocking voice, "No way."
Well then, it can't be helped. I'm not a weak woman who will cower at being spoken to like this. Put my son on.
If you're going to lecture, forget it.
put my son on now. When I yelled loudly,
Don't act tough on the phone. If you yell again, I'll headbutt you.
Hello?
I have something important to talk about, so come home.
It's depressing. I don't want to hear it.
I have to give you the congratulatory card.
A card?
The hearing about the congratulatory card. My son said, I'll come, and I felt even more pitiful. But since Simon might get angry and leave if he had to face Liddy's rapid-fire words, I talked to him alone. I wanted Simon and Liddy to become strong-minded people, so I didn't indulge them or allow selfishness during their teenage and 20s.
But enough with the old stories. Where's the gift?
Since your father worked hard, I was able to save most of the money I earned from calligraphy. Simon's eyes sparkled as the conversation turned to money. I lived frugally and saved money, planning to surprise you with a large sum when you got married. Simon's smile grew, and he leaned forward. I saved $100,000 for you. My son's eyes widened in surprise, and he shouted with joy.
For $100,000.
But you did something unthinkable by holding a wedding without telling your real mother.
What?
In my common sense, that's something that should never happen. So, you're no longer my son. You're a stranger. It would be rude to give a stranger such a large gift, so I decline.
My son stood frozen with his mouth open for a few seconds, then burst into tears and ranted.
What are you talking about, stranger? Give me the $100,000.
My only child is my daughter. Letty, please leave.
Wait! Gloriana said she didn't want to invite you.
That's why you should only care about your new family.
And my firm attitude and cold voice left Simon flustered.
The conversation is over.
Stop talking like that. Are you saying you're cutting ties between parent and child?
Holding a wedding without telling me means you've already cut those ties, doesn't it?
No matter what my son said, I wouldn't forgive him.
It's always been like this. Letty. You always favor her.
I only have one child, so what do you mean by favoritism?
Simon ran out of the house, crying and screaming. As planned, I moved from the apartment to a newly built house and lived comfortably with Liddy. Without meeting Gloriana, there was no stress. However, one day when I returned from shopping, Simon was in front of the house.
I was surprised, moving to such a fine house. It looks sturdy and earthquake-resistant.
Did you follow me?
Please stop with the formal language. Give me the $100,000. It's not fair to favor only your sister.
I have nothing to say to a stranger like you.
Then Liddy came home. Brother, you brought this on yourself. Let's reflect on it a little. Not that I'll forgive you, even if you do.
You plan to take $200,000, including my share.
You're 35 and still expecting money from your parents. Don't you get it? Liddy's words were harsh. I intervened, fearing Simon might get angry.
You chose this path. You chose your wife over your mother and sister. Holding the wedding in silence means just that.
As Simon hung his head, unable to argue, a taxi pulled up, and Gloriana got out, shouting,
I wasn't invited, but I came. I thought you were being manipulated by your toxic mother and sister.
Gloriana ranted at Liddy and me like a machine gun.
Moving without telling your family. That's unbelievable. Dimly.
I looked back, then at Gloriana and Simon again.
Who's talking about whose family?
Though you're going that way. Running around dramatically to say you're talking to the wall, not me. You've watched too many movies, but I don't mind that kind of timing.
You said it. You called me a fake mother, so I have no intention of giving wedding or moving gifts to a fake son and a fake daughter.
Nitpicking? Huh. If you nitpick, I'll counter with a neck chop before a dragon screw. You won't catch me with wordplay.
I couldn't hold back and yelled, "Speak seriously when talking about important matters."
I'll call the police.
Hearing the word police, Gloriana seemed a bit frightened but didn't give up.
Anyway, we'll take the $100,000.
The tap. Simon and Gloriana left. Epsel Equirius, as disappointed by their desire for the $100,000, not because they wanted to keep family ties. It's a common plot in dramas where the mother eventually gives in to emotion and hands over the money to her son. But that would never be for my son's benefit. If one goes astray, family should help. But if the spoiled thinking isn't cured, the same mistakes will surely be repeated. I had a strong resolve not to give even a single dollar. I want to treat good citizens with the gentleness and freshness of a spring breeze. But against evil, a spring breeze won't protect those dear to me. Against evil, against enemies, I must face them like a lion. My policy is to respond sincerely to sincere people, but to respond with strength to arrogant ones. The boomerang effect is scary. Given her attitude, Gloriana may have hurt many people in her life. Gloriana's parents seem to be on the brink of divorce. My son informed me, but it's none of our business. Gloriana's father, who seems to be 60, my age, had an affair with a woman 20 years younger. He had an inappropriate relationship with a female employee for years, and it seems his wife found out. Gloriana and her father argued during a marital fight, and her father ended up in the hospital. I was surprised that Simon's previous words were not a metaphor. She really did hit him. One night, Simon came crying. Despite it being night, Simon raised his voice.
Family helps each other when in trouble, right?
Your voice is loud. It's a nuisance to the neighbors. Sure enough, a neighbor was looking out the window, so I reluctantly let Simon in.
Gloriana and my father were arguing, and when my father slapped Gloriana, she unbelievably countered with the German suplex.
German?
You wouldn't think Gloriana could do such a vivid bridge with that body normally.
Liddy slammed the table with a bang, angry.
Speak seriously when you're asking for something serious.
I'm not joking. I'm just flustered.
I don't know much about wrestling, so I don't know what a German suplex is, but I understood that Simon was confused.
My father hit the back of his head and is now hospitalized. He's lying about falling down the stairs, but the doctor is suspicious.
You have to tell the doctor this is an assault case.
Please stop.
After holding his head in his hands, my son spoke softly.
If my father can't work, our finances will be tight. Neither my mother nor Gloriana work, and my meager salary can't support us.
Then you must get Gloriana to work quickly, though I worry if any company would hire her. Even with the sarcasm towards Gloriana, Simon didn't get angry, but bowed his head.
Nah, I don't need $100,000. Just give me $10,000, please.
It's impossible.
When I answered without hesitation, Simon said, understood. I'll bring Gloriana and she'll apologize.
That won't happen.
I'll make her apologize.
If my son could make Gloriana apologize, I thought I might reconsider, my parental feelings getting the better of me. The next day, Simon really brought Gloriana. Gloriana, probably acting, looked solemn, bowed her head.
Please forgive my rudeness until now.
Lies. Did you think you were being rude?
For a moment, Gloriana glared at Liddy, but quickly hung her head.
Please, help our family. I beg you.
I refuse.
As Gloriana tried to kneel, I spoke first.
It's useless to grovel on the floor.
Ignoring Gloriana's trembling humiliation, my property and actions, I said, when dealing with someone who's lived for 60 years, it's important not to underestimate them without knowing what hardships they've been through. Gloriana looked up at me.
Did I look like just a gentle calligraphy teacher to you?
Even if you claim to be a mafia woman, I won't be intimidated.
Gloriana.
I smiled wryly.
A mafia woman? What a lack of imagination. It's not about that. I'm a patient person, but once I decide not to forgive, I can be utterly cold-hearted. Understand?
Isn't family supposed to help each other in times of trouble?
Liddy shook her head in disbelief.
Gloriana, you crossed a line you shouldn't have. Please leave.
Realizing she wouldn't be forgiven, Gloriana lashed out at Simon.
It's your fault for having zero persuasiveness and credibility. It's your fault for not being patient. You promised to endure whatever was said.
Take it outside. You're unbearable.
For cold-hearted sister, you should have given her a pile driver on the concrete, not on the carpet.
Feeling threatened, Simon ran out of the house and Gloriana chased after him. I didn't stop them. I heard my son's screams from outside, but I ignored them. Simon apparently divorced Gloriana, and Gloriana's parents also divorced. It's truly a family torn apart. My heart ached. If I laughed at others' tragedies, I wouldn't escape the boomerang effect either. My son came to the house again, but I spoke to him at the entrance and didn't let him in.
This is hard to say, but can I live here with you?
It's impossible.
Simon hung his head my immediate response. Indulging him now would be meaningless. After that, I heard nothing from Simon. Days like a storm continued, but now both Liddy and I enjoy clear skies every day. One day, Liddy said she would bring her current boyfriend over, and I felt a pang of anxiety. If her boyfriend turned out to be another rude and unreasonable man, I would feel it was fate. However, the young man my daughter brought was sensible and decent. I breathed a sigh of relief. I'm Melissa. I've been married for nearly 10 years now, and we're both in our 40s. We don't have any children, and I live with my husband. Cedric is 5 years older than me and works an ordinary white-collar job. I have a part-time job as well, so there's a little financial cushion for the two of us. Since getting married, we haven't had any significant arguments, and I think we've been getting along quite well. However, things have started to get a little complicated recently. It all started when I inherited a condo after my father passed away. I've been told to move into that condo and to hand over my childhood home. My father had bought a new 2-bedroom condo when we got married, and he was living there. It's not a huge place, but it's a stylish condo. And where Cedric and I live now is my childhood home. I lived with my father and mother in a 4-bedroom condo until I got married, and then my father gave it to me. I left home once to go to college, but coming back after marriage to a home filled with memories was truly joyous. That my mother passed away when I was in college, so my father was living alone in the family home. But when we were getting married, he said, "How about living in this condo?" I thought he was suggesting moving in together, but he firmly declined. He probably didn't want to interfere with our newlywed life. Then my father passed away. I inherited the 2-bedroom condo where he had been living. Fortunately, I was able to quickly find a tenant and have them sign a lease. I thought our life would continue just as before. But a year passed, and my mother-in-law surprised me with an unexpected proposal during a visit. Why don't we let Jasmine and her kids live in the 4-bedroom condo you're in? It's getting tight where they are now. Jasmine is Cedric's sister and a single mother raising 3 children. They currently live in a 2-bedroom apartment. The kids were all in elementary school now, and I understood that their place might be tight for a family of 4. However, I had never had a good impression of Jasmine. Every time we met, she looked down on me for not having children. Cedric and I got married just before I turned 30. At that time, she had already tried to outdo me, but it got even worse after I turned 30.
You're 30 and still don't have a single child. You still don't have children. And as a woman, isn't your life over?
Those words were just the beginning. The ultimate insult came when my father passed away.
You're such a disgrace, not letting your father meet his grandchild.
Jasmine is 3 years older than me, and she feels more like a younger sister-in-law than an older sister-in-law. In any case, we were technically family, so I wanted to get along if possible, and I thought I was making an effort. But after hearing those words, I wanted to keep my distance from Jasmine as much as possible. I don't have any siblings, and my only blood-related family was my father. Just in the midst of being both mentally and physically exhausted after losing him, she said those words to me without a hint of sympathy. It's impossible not to have a terrible impression after that. I had to feel I hadn't seen her since shortly after my father passed away, so I never expected such a proposal from my mother-in-law.
She says she'll pay the rent. $500 a month.
She said this with a look on her face, as if to say, isn't that a great deal? I was utterly astonished. Our condo is not that new, but it has been renovated, so the facilities are clean and there are no problems. With good public transport and being adjacent to a mall, if we were to rent it out, the rent would undoubtedly be over $2,000. $500. I don't know if they're unaware of the market price or what, but that's a lot of nerve to mention such a figure when talking about renting a 4-bedroom condo. Since I didn't say anything, my mother-in-law must have taken it as a confirmation and proceeded with the conversation.
Don't you have a condo that you're renting out now? Pichu can live there. Just don't renew the lease. Pichu can move in, and once you're done moving, Asmin and her family can move in. How many years is the lease? She said. Cedric, being himself, said, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea." The condo where my father-in-law lived is new and stylish, and it's enough space for the two of us to live in.
Bits and thicks, it seemed like the conversation would just keep moving forward on its own. So I asked, aren't we supposed to live here together? In reality, my in-laws live in a single-family home, and now it's just my father-in-law and mother-in-law living there. Cedric and Jasmine's rooms aren't even being used. It seemed like it wouldn't be a problem if Jasmine's family moved in. Rather, if they wanted to move to a larger place, shouldn't they rely on their parents' home before asking us to move? However, it seems that if they move into my in-laws' home, the children will have to transfer schools. They would need to purchase new school uniforms and other things, so they said it would be a waste of money.
I couldn't explicitly say no to my mother-in-law about renting the place to Jasmine, but I told her, this is where I was born and raised. I can't just decide to leave so easily. We left my in-laws' house without saying anything else that day.
Considering that, my mother-in-law said, I'm not saying you have to do it right away. She probably hasn't given up at all. When I got back to the condo, I said to Cedric, this is my family home, you know? How can you agree to leave so easily? He said seemed surprised, like he hadn't even thought I was angry.
Wait, but your family home is a condo, he said.
I was truly disappointed with Cedric, who just said that without apologizing. Cedric, who grew up in a single-family home, seems to have a strong impression that a family home must be a standalone house. He doesn't seem to understand how I could consider a condo my family home. Since we were raised in different environments, I suppose it's understandable, but a simple word of apology would have been nice. My anger reached a peak, and I raised my voice.
The condo is my family home. Don't go making decisions about my condo on your own. Isaac seemed displeased when I referred to it as my condo.
What do you mean your condo? We've been married for 10 years. It's our condo, he shouted back. Better if he hadn't denied that I think of this condo as my family home, if he hadn't resisted renting it to my sister-in-law. I might not have minded Cedric calling it our condo. But now, I couldn't help but feel disgusted when he said our condo.
After that, we talked about it many times, but we were still at an impasse.
Cedric, who never considered my feelings, called me a stingy, stubborn, and malicious.
We both refused to give in, and in the end, we couldn't make any decisions or solve anything for several months. All the while, my mother-in-law would contact us, asking, "Have you thought about what we discussed last time?" Since my mother-in-law and Cedric, who wouldn't support me or driving me to my limit. Then one day, I got a text from Jasmine, who's finally furious that the matter wasn't progressing.
We don't have kids, so a 2-bedroom condo should be enough. That living with just the 2 of you in a 4-bedroom condo is a luxury. Or just move out.
I hadn't been in touch with Jasmine since my mother-in-law brought up the condo issue, so this was out of the blue. No polite request to rent, no pleases, just a command to leave. Who does she think she is? Reading the text from Jasmine, I felt foolish for trying to keep things amicable until now. As we talked, the word divorces crossed my mind again and again. Each time, I tried to suppress my emotions, but I knew I was at the end of my tether. Actually, I went to the courthouse and picked up divorce papers, then made a call to a certain place. A few days later, I headed to the county clerk's office. When I obtained the copies of the property deeds, I found that the condo I live in and the one I'm renting out are both in my name. At this confirmation, I decided to give my husband one last chance. I've told you over and over, I really don't want to rent this condo to Jasmine. It's my family home. I just can't bear to rent it to someone who's looked down on me and said awful things. I want you to tell her not to count on this place either. Cedric's face showed clear annoyance. It was always like this when I brought up the subject. In the past, during arguments with Cedric, I told him everything Jasmine had said to me. I thought by telling him, he would understand why I didn't want to rent to Jasmine. But that didn't happen. In retrospect, I should have divorced him right then and there. It would have spared me so much distress. I didn't have the courage to leave someone I'd been with for 10 years, or to be alone as I approached 40. Now it's different. If Cedric rejects my proposal, I'll say goodbye. I had made up my mind, and that was my plea.
You hate moving out of your family home that much? You're just tormenting Jasmine because you hate her. It's your fault for acting in a way that invites disdain, and plus, you're just exaggerating. It's not like you've been told anything that bad. I can't understand why you can be so spiteful.
Unaware of my desperate resolve. Cedric said this with a baffled look on his face. I just couldn't understand Cedric, who never once sided with me, no matter how many times I told him. Perhaps we can never understand each other anymore. Then please fill this out. At those words, I handed him the divorce papers. I thought he might panic or become agitated, but Cedric simply snorted with a smirk when he saw the divorce papers.
Come on, what's this about? You think threatening to divorce me will make me back down?
Cedric seemed to think I wasn't serious about the divorce. This isn't a threat. I thought I could get along with Jasmine, even if she's just my sister-in-law. But now I feel it's impossible. Same with your mother and you. I can't trust you anymore, and there's no love left. It's over. Pack your things and leave now. Without knowing how determined I was about the divorce, Cedric laughed. Anger welled within me, and I spoke my mind. I wanted him to leave as soon as possible.
Esmond and my mom don't necessarily dislike you. Can't you see this is all your fault because you only think about yourself?
Feeling that this was getting us nowhere. I said, enough. We can't understand each other anymore. You don't want to understand me, and I don't want to understand you. I had made up my mind, and that was my plea. I understand you. I can only think of divorce. If you don't sign, I'll file for mediation. I said this coldly.
Cedric yelled enough already, kicked the wall, and stormed out of the house. He didn't sign the divorce papers or take any of his belongings. It seemed he just wanted to leave the situation behind.
But days later, just as I expected, Cedric came back.
With a guilty look on his face. He asked, "What should I do?"
Does he think that I'll forgive him if he humbles himself? That there's nothing to do at all. Everything's already settled. If you agree to the divorce, sign the divorce papers. If not, I'll file for mediation. Also, I've decided to sell this condo. Yes, I decided to sell my family home. The day I went to court to get the divorce papers, I contacted my father's friend, Mr. Allen. I had met Mr. Allen several times since I was young, and he was very close to my father.
Mr. Allen, who came to my father's memorial service, gave me his business card saying, if you need anything, just ask.
His business card listed the name of his law firm. Mr. Allen was a lawyer there. Thanks to Mr. Allen introducing me to a judicial scrivener, I was able to smoothly process my father's inheritance. When I consulted him about this matter, Mr. Allen was supportive, advising me to check the ownership of the condo and giving advice for when the divorce might not be agreed upon. I think that's why I could take a strong stand. After Cedric left the house, I resolved to sell the condo. I contacted a real estate agent and told them I wanted to sell. I informed Mr. Allen that the conversation with Cedric had not gone well, that I could not get him to sign the divorce papers, and that he had left the house without settling anything. I asked for his help if it came to mediation.
Cedric, upon hearing that the condo was going up for sale, widened his eyes and, contrary to his previous attitude, let out an intimidating low voice. "What? So you kept saying it's your family home, and now you're selling it? So it wasn't that important after all. Then you could have rented it to Jasmine, you stingy woman."
Cedric might have lashed out, but I no longer cared what he said. So, I sent him a cold glance. He seemed a bit stiffened, but apparently he wasn't backing down yet.
Don't just decide to sell it on your own. A title may be in your name, but when we divorce, there should be a division of property. This condo was our shared property where we lived, right?
Facing the defiant Cedric, I smugly said, "Too bad. This condo was put in my name by my father just before I got married. Plus, anything I owned before marriage isn't subject to property division. I've already confirmed it with the lawyer. It's though it was hard to let go of the family home. I didn't want to increase the bad memories associated with this place by holding on to it. I consulted with Mr. Allen, and once I found out that the condo wouldn't be subject to property division, I was able to decide to sell it right away. Upon learning the truth, Cedric changed his attitude completely, now clinging to me in an unseemly way.
I was wrong. I don't need to rent this place to Jasmine. It's your precious family home. Are you sure you want to sell it? Since you're still living here, you haven't sold it yet, right? Let's not sell it and start over here. I'll talk to Jasmine and my mother, so let's not divorce or sell the condo.
At this point, I began to wonder why I had been with such a person for 10 years. I was disgusted with myself for having been with him.
Don't say nice things now. You never stood by me no matter how many times we talked. It's absolutely impossible for me to start over with you now. Goodbye. Please pack your things and leave as soon as possible.
He continued to resist the divorce, so it ended up going to divorce mediation, and I was finally able to part ways with Cedric. Now I am free. I thought being single would be scary, but it's not so bad. I've now purchased a new 2-bedroom condo, and I'm enjoying my life as I please. Accepted the marriage, the true identity of the chubby. I know our family is struggling with debt right now. Perhaps if you get married, we can pay off the debt with the wedding contribution from your spouse's family. You're 18 now, old enough to marry. Why marry Freddie? In other words, I was being told to marry that overweight man named Freddie, all for money. For a moment, I thought it was utterly unreasonable, but then I realized I had only 2 options. Either plunge into a hell of debt by refusing to marry or spend my life with Freddie. As these were the only choices swirling in my head, I remembered something. I was willing to do anything to get out of this house. The story goes back over a decade. My name is Felicity. I grew up being treated terribly by my parents. My father died in a car accident when I was 3. He was a very kind man, but Mom apparently didn't like him very much. I have no memories of being loved by Mom, probably because I resembled my father. Mom remarried just 6 months after my father's death. But according to her, she had been involved with my adoptive father even when my father was alive. Mom and my adoptive father, who had betrayed my kind father, treated me horribly. I was treated as if I didn't exist, and my pleas were always ignored. It seemed to get worse after my sister Olivia was born. And my adoptive father adored Olivia. Unlike Olivia, who received all of their love, I was always treated as an outcast. They did give me birthday presents every year, but they were small things like pencils or erasers, while Olivia got anything she wanted. Even at Christmas, Santa Claus never came for me. When I was little, I often cried alone, hugging my knees, thinking that Santa didn't come because I was a bad child. During those painful days, something happened. I was 7 years old. It's like on a day when heavy rain was falling due to a hurricane, Olivia got a fever. My parents, who adored Olivia, were in a panic. My adoptive father told me to buy a sports drink for Olivia. Reluctantly, I went out in the pouring rain wearing a raincoat, but my small body struggled against the strong wind and heavy rain. Moreover, our house was in the countryside, and it took an hour to reach the nearest supermarket on my little legs. When I finally reached the supermarket after great difficulty, I was shocked. I couldn't find the wallet I thought I had brought. I might have dropped it when the wind knocked me down. As I was about to turn back, tears welling in my eyes, I suddenly heard, "Wait a minute." But from my older brother, the high school student-like older brother said, "Are you alone? It's dangerous in this weather." In a kind voice, I burst into tears at his gentle demeanor and explained my situation. I expertly told him about my sister's fever and how my parents had sent me shopping, and the older brother seemed to understand my situation. "You don't need to look for your wallet. I'll help you with the shopping," he said, and he helped me with all my shopping. To see each observations, I had lost my wallet and couldn't pay a single dollar. But my older brother told me not to worry and even gave me the change. He also took me close to home in a taxi, and I felt the kindness of others for the first time in a long time. "Thank you, big brother," extectioned teens, I said with all my heart as I got out of the taxi, and my older brother's gentle smile was very impressive. I, who had spent such a childhood, turned 18. When I was a child, I only felt constrained by being treated differently from my sister. But now, as an 11th grader, my problem is money. And adoptive father were against me going to high school in the first place. Apparently, they thought it was a waste to spend money on me. But I insisted on going to high school, and the condition they gave me was that if I wanted to go to high school and stay at home, I had to put $1,000 into the family every month. The money I earned desperately from part-time jobs was consumed by living expenses. But when I became an 11th grader, I had to study for college in addition to my part-time job, and I was very busy. An adoptive father probably won't pay for my college. I spent all my time working and studying to get a scholarship. One day, Olivia, who had become an 8th grader, came home triumphantly and said to our parents, "Listen, listen. I got scouted by the entertainment industry." What Olivia put on the dining table was a business card from an entertainment production company I had never heard of. An adoptive father said, "Olivia is cute after all," and we're delighted. Olivia has a sparkle, so I thought something like this might happen. Keep it up. Olivia, having a daughter as a celebrity is great. Way to go. Olivia, you're nothing like your big sister? Well, of course. I'm much, much cuter than my big sister. Olivia, raised by parents who had always looked down on me and praised Olivia, compared herself to me at every opportunity. This time, she arrogantly asked, "You think so too, don't you, big sister?" I replied, "Yes, because arguing would undoubtedly lead to trouble." Olivia was supposed to have joined an entertainment industry, but months went by without any contact. Like the parents, who thought it was strange that they were being charged for lessons and membership fees, found out that the entertainment agency was a fraudulent group and had already disappeared. All that was left for the parents was a debt of $20,000. The parents looked desperate, but I just calmly paid $1,000 to the family and focused on my studies. I won't spare any effort if I can get out of this house. At that mind, I was working hard at my part-time job and studying. A few weeks later, when I got home, I heard an unfamiliar voice from the living room. Wondering what it was, I was about to go up to my room on the second floor when I heard adoptive father calling me from the living room. I peeked into the living room and found two unfamiliar men besides adoptive father. One was a man of the same adoptive father, and the other was a very fat man. But sure as I was surprised by the size of the man sweating in the air-conditioned room, adoptive father introduced the two. "This is Mr. Newell. Say hello. Ah, nice to meet you." As I hurriedly greeted them, the two men smiled and looked at me. Mr. Newell is a well-known large-scale landowner in this area, known to everyone. Why would such people come to our house? As I was puzzled, adoptive father said something outrageous. "Mr. Newell's son, Freddie is your fiancé." Be polite. What? Startled, I raised my voice. An adoptive father, looking flustered, took me out into the hallway. What's going on? I asked adoptive father in a whisper, and he answered in a whisper as well. You know we're in trouble with debt. If you marry, we can pay off the debt with the wedding contribution from their family. You're 18 now and can marry. We'll marry Freddie. In other words, I had to marry that fat man? Freddie, for money. I thought it was utterly unreasonable for a moment, but I realized I had only two choices. Either reject the marriage and plunge into debt hell or marry and live with Freddie. As those were the only two options swirling in my head, I remembered. I was willing to do anything to get out of this house.
Are you done talking? What do you think? Felicity, will you marry our Freddie?
Mr. Newell, who had been waiting in the living room, asked me anxiously. I answered with a smile. Yes, gladly. And so, I was to marry Freddie that very day. I was told to live at Freddie's house right away and was kicked out of the house, right of strict.
With only my study materials. Betty asked, "Don't you have any clothes or anything?"
But I had never bought cute clothes.
"That's all I have," I said. Betty lowered his eyebrows and said, "I see."
Mr. Newell, no. My father-in-law was a well-known landowner whose name I had heard, but he was a very friendly person. His car drove through a large gate and into a vast estate, and it stopped in front of a solitary house. This is a separate house I built for Freddie when he got married, but Freddie couldn't find a spouse. I'm glad a wonderful woman like Felicity is marrying him. I live in the main house, so Felicity, you should live here with Freddie. With just a brief explanation, my father-in-law said, well, I'll leave it to the young couple, and left Freddie and me behind. suddenly alone. I was a bit wary of Freddy, but he calmly showed me around the separate house.
And he brought me to a spacious room furnished with furniture, saying, "This is your room." Functions for only Palagiri. Who's at the inside lock works. And if you're worried, don't hesitate to ask for a key change. I won't lay a finger on you. Listen, I've told your parents that we'll cover your high school expenses. You should reduce your part-time job if you can. That way you can study more. If you want to go to college, I'll let you go.
I blinked at the unexpectedly good treatment. Freddy even said he had no intention of getting a marriage license and that we would have a common law marriage, so I could go to another man if I found one I liked. Far exceeding my expectations, I inadvertently asked, what is this marriage for? I feel like I'm the only one benefiting. Is it predictions of I wondered if it was rude after I said it, but it would be troublesome if I were asked for something outrageous later.
Thinking I should check just in case. I waited for Freddy's words, and he began, "I might be meddling, but I thought you might be in trouble." Felicity. Do you remember when you went shopping on the day of the hurricane when you were little? We met then, but do you remember?
I was taken aback. There's no way I wouldn't remember. I still remember the face of the kind older brother from that time. I realized that if the older brother gained weight, he might look like this. Were you the older brother from that time? I'm sorry.
It can't be helped since I've gained a lot of weight. The stress from becoming a working adult made me eat too much. But you haven't changed. Felicity, when my dad showed me your picture and asked if I wanted to marry you, I knew right away it was you. Are you still being discriminated against and suffering like your sister?
Just like on the day of the hurricane, Freddy spoke to me kindly and I nodded. Then Freddy smiled to reassure me.
It's okay now. You don't have to worry about money or being treated badly anymore.
Touched by Freddy's kindness, tears welled up in my eyes. Picture in front of Freddy, who hurriedly handed me a beautiful handkerchief. I cried, and from that day on, Freddy and I started living together. I spent my first ever free time studying. I was so happy to be able to study for college like this. Freddy said he didn't need living expenses, but I decided to contribute only $300 because living for free felt constraining. Since I only had to earn $300 in my allowance, I was able to significantly reduce my part-time job hours.
Freddy took the initiative in doing household chores, and when I was doing them, he would kindly say, "You can go study and take over for me."
In the happiest days of my life, Freddy and I gradually grew closer. We spent our days like an ordinary married couple, laughing together while watching variety shows and going out on holidays. A few months later, I was leading a calm life when I received a phone call from my adoptive father. What could he want now, after never worrying about me and leaving me alone all this time? I picked up the phone with a bad feeling.
Felicity, is that you? Mom's in serious trouble.
Until I was taken aback by adoptive father's loud voice as soon as I answered the phone. According to adoptive father, Mom had fallen sick and needed immediate surgery, so he was calling me to ask to transfer $10,000 to a specified account. Mom had neglected me since childhood, but she was still my mom. Facing a life-threatening situation, I couldn't just ignore her. What happened all of a sudden? To which hospital and what kind of illness?
When I asked out of concern, adoptive father hesitated, saying, well, it's the hospital, but I began to feel something was off as adoptive father suddenly became flustered.
He couldn't even name the disease, which was clearly suspicious. You're lying, aren't you? Enough. Don't call me for such nonsense.
Wait, okay. I admit it. I lied. The truth is, I had an accident recently, and I'm being billed $10,000.
According to adoptive father, he had crashed his car the other day, and the person he hit was a scary guy. He was now being billed $10,000 for repairs and medical expenses, and he claimed he couldn't pay. My irritation with him grew.
You're probably lying again.
It's true this time. Please, Isati, ask Freddy to transfer the $10,000. You're all we have left.
I snapped at adoptive father's desperate plea.
Don't mess with me. I can't believe you called after so long just to ask for money. Neither you nor Mom ever cared about me, not even once.
And now you want me to help you? That's too convenient. No matter what you say, I have no intention of transferring the money. Goodbye.
Ignoring adoptive father's plea to wait. I hung up the phone and blocked the numbers of adoptive father, Mom, and Olivia.
A few weeks later, as I happened to pass by my family's house, I noticed it was vacant. A gossip-loving neighbor lady approached me, and from her, I learned that the story about hitting a scary guy's car was true. According to the neighbor lady, my parents and Olivia had secretly packed their bags and left the house at night. They must have fled and are likely living a hidden life now. Living in fear must be incredibly stifling. Thinking about it, I felt a sense of relief deep in my heart. Meanwhile, I was living happy days. I completely fallen in love with Freddy. Excellent to manifestations, though Freddy, who was 10 years older than me, was often hesitant about dating me. My persistent confessions led to a decision to start dating once I graduated from high school. Freddy even took time off work to attend my high school graduation ceremony. That's as he accompanied me in my eating and exercise habits. Freddy slimmed down to his original figure and transformed into a handsome man. My friends were envious when I proudly introduced him as my boyfriend. After my high school graduation, Freddy and I submitted our marriage registration to officially get married. When I said I wanted to marry, Freddy nodded in agreement, so we decided to submit the marriage registration. Actually, it would take a little time for the marriage certificate to be issued, but now we were officially a married couple. On the way home from the city hall, we held hands for the first time. I laughed at Freddy's adorable shyness, and he said, "Now that you're my wife, Felicity, you can't be swayed by any handsome boys you meet in college." I thought I was the only one in love, but it seemed Freddie loved me very much too. I found it so ticklish that I burst into laughter. There's no way that could happen. Out of all the people I've met, Freddie is the most handsome, I said. I'm Janessa, 26 years old. That's Jan. I've been married to Steve, a year older than me, for 2 years. Steve works for the government, while I work part-time and am financially dependent on him. But our debts are limited to student loans and a car loan. From the start of our marriage, we wanted kids, but it always seemed financially challenging. As with our student loans soon to be paid off, we started to think maybe we could afford it. One day, our home phone rang and Steve answered. It seemed like it was my mother-in-law on the other end. He's doing house chores at that time and couldn't catch the entire conversation, but they seemed deeply engrossed in their chat. It's about 30 minutes later. Steve hung up, saying he'd discuss it with me. What's up? Anything wrong with mother-in-law? She said that Stella's wedding date is set. Stella is my sister-in-law. We get along pretty well, emailing occasionally. I've heard about her boyfriend, so learning about their upcoming wedding was heartwarming. But, oh really? Only terrestrial? When is it? For some reason, Steve didn't seem as thrilled. Well, about the wedding, did something happen to Stella? My mom wants to contribute to the wedding expenses and is asking to borrow $10,000 from us, Steve explained. Wait, for what? By us. She mentioned that Stella's fiancé intends to pay for everything without any help from his parents, but mother-in-law wasn't too pleased about that and wants to help out financially. Steve continued. Why would she borrow money from us when they're trying to handle it themselves? In fact, we received $7,000 from them for our wedding. Although we intended to repay it, after an intoxicated relative of Steve's dad caused chaos at our wedding reception, we considered it compensation for the ruined event. We shouldn't lend the money without discussing it first. I suggested calling our wedding. I remembered feeling upset with my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, who made comments about my parents not chipping in. With a troubled look, Steve tried to persuade me. We do have savings over $10,000, but it's in a fixed deposit, and it's cheaper to borrow than break the deposit. It's a perspective we both share. Female suggested that since Steve's a government employee, he could get a low-interest loan. She promises to repay us as soon as they receive the wedding gifts. But I just don't feel good about getting into debt, especially for this reason. Why should we borrow money to help Mill show off? Moreover, it's surprising to know they're strapped for cash. Steve's dad runs his own business, and though Mel works, I'm not sure about her job status. My sister-in-law has a full-time job. Each time we visit them, Emil brags about her overseas trips, designer outfits, and luxury brands like Chanel and Louis Vuitton. She seems to be living beyond her means, which annoys me. Moreover, Steve mentioned Mile intends to keep this loan a secret from Stella. If you're dead set on this, at least be transparent with your dad and Stella. I don't want to be part of any secrets. Well, I understand my mom's desire to look good. Let's just stay silent on this, okay? But Shin, don't you think you're being a bit too cautious? What? You're saying I'm being narrow-minded? No matter how much she promises to pay back, it's still a significant amount of money. We need to think about this. I was starting to get irritated by my husband's careless remarks. It's not that I dislike Stella. Stella's genuinely a sweet girl. She even stood up for us when that drunk uncle caused a scene at our wedding. I was planning to give her a regular wedding gift. The last time we met, she happily mentioned, with the wedding reception expenses saved up, we can even go on a honeymoon. The $10,000 seems more for my Mile than for Stella, and that doesn't sit right with me. I get that my husband earns his money, but we kept discussing this for days. He thinks since we won't technically lose out, why not lend it? But I can't stand my Mel's casual attitude about borrowing money. Our talks never end well, and we risk slipping into arguments. This is the first time since our marriage that our views diverged this much. What really irks me about my husband is that if we do lend the money, he needs to explain the situation to his father and sister. But he's clearly reluctant because he knows his mom will hassle him about keeping it a secret. She helped us out during our time, so what's the big deal about lending for a short period? And for our wedding, my side and his side split the expenses. I used my savings and the cash gifts we received. His parents covered his portion and later gave them the cash gifts they received from his side. That difference came to about $7,000. It's not about being stingy. That's a burden Steve took on. How does this concern me? He either had no comeback or simply didn't want to argue any further. He went silent. He didn't conclude, and in the days that followed, he kept receiving calls and emails from his mother. Lately, he's been ignoring her calls. I'm just tired of her constant nagging about money, he'd say, frowning. The more I see him like this, the more I feel it might be worth the $10,000 to cut ties with his family. Finally, on a day off, he decided to visit his parents and sort things out. I doubted he'd refuse, so I said, if you do lend it, make sure to get a written agreement from her. He came back later that day looking drained. I got him to sit up and asked how it went. Apparently, while this was my mother-in-law's idea, his dad was on board too. They feel obligated as parents to contribute to the wedding, but they genuinely don't have the money. So they see borrowing from him as a temporary solution, thinking there's no need to tell their daughter. Why are you so fixated on this? At dining, they'd ask, emphasizing they don't want their daughter's fiancé to find out. They fear it would tarnish their reputation, which makes me wonder what they think of us. Then, my sister-in-law had told me earlier she had saved up money. But it looks like expenses for the venue decorations, attire, and production costs were more than she'd anticipated. Apparently, she's running short. So, she seems to be telling my mother-in-law that she'll pay her back with the wedding gift money and is asking for a loan. I doubt Stella ever imagined her parents would be asking us for money. According to mother-in-law, the amount they're short by is exactly what they were thinking of borrowing from us, About $10,000. Also, it seems there's been some friction between my sister-in-law and her fiancé over the wedding and reception, but it's unclear what the exact issues are. You know, should we just lend them the money secretly? You know how stubborn Janessa is, right? Wait, I told you I'm not okay with that. Did you not mention my conditions to mother-in-law and the others? Come on! You can see how much of a hassle it'll be if I tell them, right? Why do we have to deal with this on our day off? That's what I should be saying. They're your parents. I'm not even related by blood, so I'm the one getting dragged into this. You really can be cold-hearted. You might say bad things about my mom, but it's not for her own leisure. Can't you understand a parent's feelings, wanting to provide for Stella? Don't you get it? If it's for Stella's sake, shouldn't they have thought about Stella's future way in advance and saved up? And Steve, he borrowed the maximum amount for his student loans because he just went along with what his parents said. Now he's struggling to pay it back. They've been on overseas trips since Steve was very young, and he doesn't even remember most of them. If they had skipped a few trips, wouldn't that have eased the loan burden? The bag Mill carries is worth about $3,000. I don't like hearing bad things about my parents either. My bottled-up frustrations exploded, and I vented it all out on my husband. He'd been yelling with such intensity earlier, but now he's silently looking down. I think he might be angry. I took a peek, and he looked pale.
That bag costs $3,000. Really?
I silently showed him the price I found online for Miles' bag. I'm not sure if Miles' bag is genuine, but my husband isn't familiar with luxury brands and their counterfeits, so I kept quiet. Plesk, Beale always shows it off to me with pride. Even if it's a fake, she might have unknowingly paid a lot for it. What do Mile and the rest plan for their retirement if they're spending lavishly but can't spare $10,000?
You're right. My feelings are torn because it's my sister's wedding, and I want to help as much as possible. But something's off with my mom and my dad. We're not saying anything about it. Seems strange, too.
In that moment, my husband's perspective shifted completely, and he sided with me. I borrowed his phone and sent Mill an email. But to summarize the content, why is it okay to make your son take on debt if you don't like borrowing from consumer finance? You called my parents cold-hearted for not giving money, but is making your son take on debt and give money kind-hearted. What do you think about not having $10,000 at your age? I understand the benefits of using the mutual aid system, but since my sister-in-law's fiancé is a public servant, shouldn't he be the one to take advantage of it? I wonder if my sister-in-law, her fiancé, and their parents even know about the situation. If they're unaware, how do they plan to recover the wedding gift money? Depending on their response, I'll reconsider my relationship with them. I sent a message articulating all these concerns in a very sarcastic tone. Back in college, and I earned a master's degree in law, which seems rather useless in my daily life. But in moments like this, I feel as if I got it just to craft such messages. I showed my draft to my husband, and with his approval, sent it. In about an hour, a reply came. You dare speak to your in-laws like that? Consider your place? Basically, it's Steve borrowing money, not your place to interfere. You've been married for about 2 years now, and it seems you can't have children. Maybe it's time for some self-reflection on your role as a wife. That to the condescending tone pissed me off, but there was no direct answer to my questions. Frustrated, I quickly fired back an email. We haven't legally adopted you, so you're not my parent. Even if you were, I'd still ask what I want to know. My husband and I share our finances, so I believe I have a say in how we spend our money. And as I said, I'll leave the final decision to my husband. We're not struggling to have kids. We're both working and juggling car loans and your son's student loan repayments. So financial stability isn't easy for us right now. We've made plans, so please refrain from interfering. And I don't recall marrying just to produce a grandchild for you. I've never spoken out against my mother-in-law like this before. I've regretted the impulse email a bit, but my husband assured me, if she says anything, I've got your back. The next email from my mother-in-law read, you truly are a pitiful person. You think you can corner me with your pretentious behavior? If I could turn back time to the day Steve first brought you home, I would oppose the marriage with all my might. If there's one thing I regret, it's not seeing your true nature sooner. If you ever find yourself in a tight spot, don't expect any help from me. Realizing that any reply would be met with more off-target remarks, I chose not to respond. However, my father-in-law, apparently having seen my email too, angrily called my husband an arrogant, uneducated little girl. She's not our daughter, and we're not her parents. What was that email all about? Just because we've been polite, she thinks she can get carried away. Maybe it's because your story doesn't add up. Don't you think Mom's perspective is a bit off, Dad? I assumed your business was doing well, which is why Mom could afford all her luxuries. But now look where we are. Forget Stella's wedding costs. Shouldn't you two discuss your future plans more thoroughly? Otherwise, financial issues will just keep popping up. You're still under her influence, aren't you? Do you remember who raised you to be who you are today? Was it not me and your mother? You know, I only said it because I'm worried, right? We have our own lives to think about, and we can't always be there to help. If you're going to act like this, Mom and Dad, we might not visit for a while. With that, he hung up with a huff. I feel bad for dragging you into this. I never meant for you to turn against your parents like that. No, it's okay. I grew up with them my whole life. There were things I didn't notice because I thought it was normal. It's good to have some clarity now. I'm sorry for dragging you into this mess. It's all right, as long as you're okay. We decided there was no point in arguing anymore. The wedding was getting closer, and thinking about my sister-in-law who had no idea and probably thought our parents would help, we decided to tell her privately. So, I reached out to her to meet up. Turns out she had no idea about any of this. I had no clue things were this way. I didn't know Mom was struggling financially, I mean, I thought she was a bit careless with money, but she works too, so I assumed she was just managing her spending money. I'm sorry to bring this up, especially with the wedding around the corner, but if you need it, we're willing to lend you the money directly. Just let us know. No, that's too much. My husband hates debts. Even the loan for the car we're using.
No, that's too much. And if anything, we'll just get a loan.
There's no need to borrow from you and Steve. We've had some disagreements about the wedding preparations lately, and if he found out about this, it would just make things worse. Our budget is tight, but we'll try to make do, even if it means crafting things ourselves to save money.
Well, if you need any help with things like a welcome sign or something, Steve and I can help out. Just ask.
She thanked us and, despite not knowing about it before, deeply apologized for her mother's actions. It was tough to see her feel so guilty. As the wedding date neared, my mother-in-law contacted my husband. Apparently, she had said she might not attend our sister-in-law's wedding. I always wondered how my brother would explain to the relatives why she didn't attend. It would surely raise eyebrows. It's a shame because I was really looking forward to seeing my sister-in-law in her wedding dress, but I can't bring myself to apologize and go. It's just how it is. I'll ask to see the photos later on. A few months after that, we returned the $7,000 difference in wedding expenses to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Well, our relationship hasn't ended completely. My husband, who often relocates for work, got assigned to a place far from his parents, so it's less likely we'll interact much anymore. On the wedding day, when my sister-in-law and her husband realized we weren't there, she confronted my mother-in-law. She admitted she told us not to come. Catch pico and polity a 1006, and not sure how the story got around, but her husband, who knew nothing about this until then, was furious. It seems he's developed quite a disdain for his in-laws. They always wanted the couple to live with them eventually. It's a sad outcome for them, but they brought it upon themselves. Looking back, maybe the reason they spent money recklessly, buying branded items and taking frequent trips abroad, was thinking they'd be supported if they lived with their son. Perhaps they borrowed money from us for the wedding expenses to keep up appearances and told the fiancé to make sure he never found out. One day, when my husband and I were discussing this, my sister-in-law called me.
Stella? It's been a while.
Hey, Janessa, must hold the Queesix a long time no talk. I heard from my brother about your move. I wanted to send you a little something to celebrate. Is your current address still good?
You don't have to do that, but thank you. Was confirmly, or moving in a few weeks, so this address is fine. I'll email you the new one later on.
Please do. You never know when a blessing will come, but we're hoping for one soon. As a seasoned mom, you'll have to share some tips with me.
Yes, we were finally expecting a baby.
Absolutely. Reach out if you need anything.
I will. Take care.
Since I don't have any siblings, so having such a sweet sister-in-law makes me feel truly blessed. With one more family member on the way, I touched my belly, feeling motivated for the future. Twice when I arrived at daycare, the same old mom friend spotted me and started with her sarcastic remarks as usual.
Oh, your husband's with you today. He must have a lot of free time on his hands. I live in a different world than you low-income people. It's truly unpleasant to see people like you.
That's when the principal came over with a pale face, but her harassment wouldn't stop even with the principal's intervention.
Why is someone like her at this daycare? I want her to leave.
My husband calmly took out his business card and greeted her respectfully.
My wife and daughter are always in your care.
The woman hastily accepted the business card and fled the scene. My name is Matilda. I live happily with my kind husband and 3-year-old daughter. I met my husband when I was a college student. We were both in the business department and had many overlapping classes, and we naturally became friends. I never understood how I became friends with him, as he was always cheerful and popular with everyone. Apparently and wishly to the taker, I was plain-looking and not good at speaking in public, so I never thought I'd be the type of person to get along with him.
Whenever I said this, he would gently tell me, you can have more confidence in yourself.
His words helped me many times, and even a shy person like me made wonderful friends and enjoyed my college life. Gradually, he became a significant presence in my life. It probably started as admiration, but it slowly turned into affection. Unbelievably, he had feelings for me too. We began dating in our sophomore year and started living together 3 years into our working lives.
And from that time, he began to feel, I want to be with this person forever. So we rented a slightly larger, beautiful room when we moved in together.
The time we spent discussing things like sunlight, kitchen positions, and furniture designs was also a lot of fun, and I still remember it occasionally. Later, we got married and were blessed with a beloved daughter 2 years after. Our daughter is very active and good at communicating with other children, even at a young age. She can invite various children to play together. As I said earlier, I'm shy, so she probably takes after her father. But both my daughter and husband have beautiful smiles, and people naturally gather around them. My husband joined his father's company, and now he's taken over as CEO. At first, people questioned if he got the job through connections, and it was tough for him. But watching his honest and constant effort, people's perceptions of him gradually changed. He has wonderful traits, like talking to everyone without discrimination, and always being considerate of those around him, have remained the same since we met in college. Even as his position changed, my husband's attitude never did. That's why he's admired by everyone at the company, always at the center of it all, a reflection of our daughter. I love and respect both of them so much. But what about me? I'm trying my best, but I can't seem to gain confidence and end up feeling anxious. And it shows on my face. My husband and daughter always seem to sense when I'm feeling down and encourage me.
Words from my husband like, you can have more confidence in yourself, have been my salvation. Or my daughter's I love you. have been my salvation. When my daughter started going to daycare, the mothers living nearby who had children of the same age taught me various things.
Thanks to them, even Shimai was blessed with mom friends at daycare. We'd been living in the same place since we moved in together. But one day, because of my husband's situation, we had to move, and our daughter had to go to a new daycare. It's sad to leave this town where we have so many good friends, but it can't be helped. We were determined to do our best in the new place as a family of 3. And I was a bit worried if my daughter, who had to suddenly change daycares, would fit in well. But now, every day, my daughter goes to daycare happily even after the change. Seeing her make friends so easily in the new place, I was impressed. It seems that my worries about her fitting in were unnecessary. But on the other hand, I was struggling to make mom friends at the new daycare. It seemed like I was the one who should have been worried. Actually, and speaking Cretan and Sire, I was almost in despair at the towering wall before me, wondering if building relationships from scratch in an unknown place could be this hard. That's when Claire came to my rescue. Claire's daughter was the same age as mine, and they were in the same group. But to me, someone who finds it hard to initiate conversations. Claire was like a savior. Good morning, Matilda. Wow, you look fabulous in that outfit today. Claire was always wearing dazzling clothes. Not just that, she also carried a high-end designer bag. Really, this is a new dress my husband bought for me. At first, we just made small talk. But gradually, Claire began to belittle me daily, one-upping me about education, her husband's income, children's activities, friends' professions, and more. Just with no other mom friends, I was becoming Claire's daily target, and they didn't know what to do. I was laughed at for my terrible outfits or ridiculed. You carry the same bag all the time? Is that the only one you have? To be honest, it was a considerable strain. But time passed, and I couldn't confide in anyone. And today, Claire found me and approached me again. Matilda, you look so casual again today, she said, laughing at me with a snort. Then, as if remembering, she asked, so what does your husband do? Matilda, my husband is the president of a company that delivers car parts to factories. Apsectomies. I was about to tell her at the factory when she interrupted. Oh, factory work? That must be a low-income, tough job every day. Claire assumed it was factory work and cut me off. First of all, calling people working in factories a low income was rather inappropriate. I thought, I really don't like Claire. I thought, and I was wondering why she always acted as if she was mocking people. According to what I heard, Claire is apparently the daughter of the daycare owner. And because of that, nobody dared to stand up to Claire. So she was free to do as she pleased. I used to think that I could endure the minor discomfort I felt, but Claire's harassment escalated day by day, finally affecting my daughter as well. Look at scores that close to Matilda's family. They're poor and don't earn much. That's what she spread around, isolating my daughter and me. She might have been going around telling the children, You can't play with her. My daughter was always able to make friends with various children, but this time she couldn't, and she felt down.
Nobody wants to play with me anymore.
When she said that, I was tormented by not knowing what to do to help her, even though I wanted to. I want to protect my daughter. However, with Claire doing whatever she wants to us, and everyone avoiding us, what can I do? At Feuerbach's, I was afraid to take action, thinking that if I sought help from teachers or other mothers, the situation might worsen. Above all, I was infuriated and felt pathetic that I could do nothing for my daughter on my own. At that time, there was one mother who talked to us without caring, but she too ended up being harassed by Claire. And the other mothers distanced themselves from us even more. I thought I shouldn't cause trouble to the other mothers, and I couldn't say anything. Meanwhile, taking advantage of my inability to do anything, Claire would daily taunt us. If it were just me, I could bear it, but I can't leave things as they are if it's affecting my daughter. It's a situation that must be dealt with as soon as possible. Finally, I consulted my husband about the incidents at daycare and the awkwardness that had arisen.
He said, "It must have been hard, thank you for telling me," and suggested that we go pick her up together from now on.
Indeed, going together does seem to ease the burden a bit. Although I felt bad for my busy husband. I couldn't thank him enough for creating time for us with a smile.
Matilda, you're taking on too much alone. You can rely on me and everyone around us.
At those kind words, the tension I'd been feeling lately gave way, and tears flowed. The very next day, my husband and I went together to pick up our daughter. I wanted to avoid making our daughter feel uncomfortable, so I had told my husband that even if Claire said something, he should not argue back or raise his voice. We're just going today to see what the situation is like. That's our feeling about it. Maybe just the fact that my husband is with me will change Claire's attitude. When we arrived at the daycare as usual, Claire spotted me and made a sarcastic comment.
Well, your husband is with you today. You must have a lot of free time.
She didn't care that my husband was right next to me. The mothers and teachers around us looked taken aback by the scene. Then, Claire abruptly started talking about herself.
Basically, I live in a different world than people like you.
Apparently, Claire was raised by strict parents and had been treated with great care since she was a child. She'd been sternly disciplined to choose friends and lovers based on education and income.
That's why I find people like you utterly displeasing.
She should just leave us alone if that's the case. Just as I was thinking that the principal, looking pale, came over as if he had been called by someone. If Claire's mother is the owner, could the principal be her relative?
Claire, stop it.
Even when the principal tried to calm her, Claire's harassment didn't stop.
Why do I have to be in the same daycare as these people? I want them out.
Once again, she berated us, saying my clothes were shabby or that my husband's job was in low-skilled jobs, hurling insults one after another. That it was at that moment when my husband could no longer endure it and was about to speak to Claire.
Matilda's husband is the president of that company.
When the principal announced that, Claire's face froze. And then my husband took out his business card and politely greeted Claire.
Thank you for always taking care of my wife and daughter.
Receiving the business card, Claire seemed to panic more and hurriedly left the scene.
I'm sorry. I wish I had noticed sooner.
The principal said that. The principal told us that she was Claire's aunt. Claire had mentioned it earlier, and she confirmed that they came from a family that always valued titles. I was shocked by the sudden turn of events, but I felt genuinely relieved. Thinking that the misunderstanding had been cleared up and that I wouldn't be criticized anymore. After a while, my daughter came running towards us from the school building with a big smile on her face.
Mama, Papa is picking me up today too.
She said that and jumped into our arms. Our daughter seemed very happy that both of us had come to pick her up. Seeing her smile, I thought that I wanted her to always be smiling. I wonder if we can get along well with everyone from now on. I wish I had talked to my husband sooner. I think now. And then the three of us held hands and went home. She used to tell me what happened at daycare on the way home, but she hasn't talked much about it lately. When we got home, our daughter said softly, "I wonder if my friends will play with me again if I call them." Hugging her after hearing that, I apologized. "I'm sorry I made you feel sad. I feel worthless that I couldn't do anything for her sooner."
Don't hesitate to tell me if you need help.
My husband said as if he knew what I was feeling. I thought about how much I was being supported by the two of them, and I cried. Since then, Claire hasn't been as assertive as before, and we've been living a peaceful daily life. Since that day, Claire seems to have been looked at coldly by those around her, and she appears uncomfortable. "Matilda, good morning." "Good morning." Since the harassment stopped, more mothers have been talking to me, and now I have made a lot of mom friends. I had been longing for these days, but I still want to get along with everyone. I mustered up the courage to talk to Claire.
Claire, good morning. At this, Claire's eyes widened in surprise for a moment before she replied.
There was a reason I wanted to talk to her this way. I heard from the teacher that my daughter and Claire's daughter often play together. Indeed, when my daughter comes home, she often tells me about playing and talking with her.
And just the other day, she was invited to play at her house.
I've heard that your daughter has been kind to mine. Thank you.
Saying this, Claire looked down a little.
May we come to your house to play sometime?
I asked hesitantly, wondering if we might be refused. Then Claire slowly raised her face and said, My daughter invited you, so we are looking forward to it."
And she smiled a little. I'm sorry for all the terrible things I've said before.
I was very happy that Claire apologized and gladly accepted my daughter's invitation to play. Hence, with the help of our daughters, I was able to resolve the hard feelings with Claire. Since coming to the new daycare, I had been constantly troubled, but now my daughter and I are enjoying ourselves. Since that day, my husband has been picking up our daughter every day, except when he really can't, and she is delighted with that.
On the way home, our daughter cheerfully tells us about her day, and we walk slowly while discussing things like, what would you like for dinner tonight?
I want these days to continue forever. Thinking this, the three of us walk home, happily holding hands. And I was devastated, but she had a plan on her sleeve.
The good-for-nothing wife. I see no value in being with you anymore. If you have complaints, let's divorce.
The man shouting and turning red in the face in front of me was none other than my husband. How did I end up marrying a man like this?
I had been thinking that we would support each other as a family of two from now on. But then suddenly, I'll live with Dad.
What? That was the reality my daughter abruptly thrust upon me. But my daughter had a secret plan. My name is Mary and I'm 42 years old. I've been married to Johnson for almost 20 years. We're a family of 3, living with our high school freshman daughter, Mina. My husband has always been consumed by his work, so we never really went out together as a family when Mina was little. I loved my job and wanted to get back to work as soon as I put Mina in preschool, but my husband commanded me otherwise.
You're a wife and a mother, as take care of the house. Don't even think about working. You're a wife and a mother. Just take care of the house. But so like sexually as and think about working, it's ridiculous.
He takes care of the living expenses, so we don't struggle financially. But neither my daughter nor I want this kind of life. First, we want to go out together more as a family, spend time together, just the 3 of us. That's what we desire.
But when I tell my husband that, he dismisses it as it's stupid, a waste of time. But unlike you two, I'm busy with work every day, and treats my daughter and me as if we're in the way.
My daughter seemed to sense, even at a young age, that her father was rejecting family time. After a while, the time she spent talking to him decreased dramatically. On the other hand, my daughter and I got along like sisters. We would go shopping together, go to the movies on weekends. As she grew, she started helping with housework, and I could enjoy some free time for myself. My husband was relatively quiet, as long as my daughter and I didn't talk to him. He ate his meals without complaining. My daughter and I had grown accustomed to this lifestyle. But then one day, my husband started complaining about me.
Hey, I've been thinking about this for a while, but what is this mess you call food?
I didn't change the seasoning or anything.
I know that. Every single day, you serve this disgusting food? Who do you think pays for the ingredients? So, can't you handle household chores properly as a homemaker?
This is how he would yell, making unreasonable complaints. I'd never been told that my cooking's delicious, but I'd never been attacked with such harsh words before.
The seasoning is too bland. Are you treating me like an old man? Who do you think supports our lifestyle?
As his arrogance escalated, our daughter, who was eating with us, suddenly spoke. "Hey, Dad, can you not yell in the morning? It's hurting my head. And if you think the taste is bland, why don't you add your own seasoning? You're not a child." My daughter's blunt response made the husband falter for a moment. He seemed unsure how to interact with her since he had never really faced her properly. Usually, he'd get nervous every time she said something to him. Hey, are you listening? Dad? It's true that we live on your money, but who do you think cooks for you? Who lets you eat every day? Who washes your clothes so you can wear a clean shirt every day?
That is...
The husband, challenged by his daughter, struggled to find the words to reply. Then he turned his anger towards me instead.
Hey, it's your bad parenting that's made Mina such a bratty kid. How are you going to take responsibility?
What? Calling your own daughter a brat?
It's true. Mina will probably turn out just like you, no good as an adult.
The husband sneered, looking triumphant. I couldn't bear him ridiculing, not only me but our precious daughter as well.
Enough! How can you say something like that to your own daughter? You're the worst.
Raising my voice, the husband looked at me with scorn and retorted,
You're a useless wife. I don't see the point of being with you. If you complaints, let's get a divorce.
A divorce? Why would you say that all of a sudden?
What? Are you afraid of getting divorced? Well, I guess that makes sense for an unemployed homemaker like you.
It's at that the husband began to laugh loudly. As he said, I had been a homemaker for so long that he didn't have much savings. Raising our daughter alone after the divorce would undoubtedly be challenging. But living with this man any longer, I absolutely couldn't endure it. While I was agonizing over this, our daughter spoke up again. Mom, it's okay. You don't have to stay married to Dad if it's too hard. I support the divorce. At her words, I felt a sudden lightness in my heart. My biggest worry about the divorce was my daughter, but she was saying this to me. There might be struggles ahead, but as long as I was with my beloved daughter, I made up my mind and agreed to my husband's demand for a divorce.
All right, let's get divorced.
And at that, my husband, as if he had been waiting for this moment, pulled a filled out,
Come on, sign this. I'll give you the moving expenses as a parting gift. You're quite prepared, aren't you? Of course I am. You hold on too much, you know.
So that was it. My husband had been deliberately complaining to get a divorce quickly. He must have hated me so much. Though with that thought, I no longer cared about anything. I signed the divorce paper as he instructed, and he handed me the money.
Don't make the most of that money.
I felt like losing if I accepted it, but I could see that I would need the money. Thanks without a word, I took the envelope and put it in my pocket. At once I decided on the divorce, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So I decided to leave with my daughter right away. Come on, Maina, let's get ready. For now, we'll go to my parents' house until we find a new place.
I'm not moving. I'm staying with Dad, okay?
What? What did you just say? Not moving. Jane with her father? I was utterly flustered by my daughter's words. Wait a minute. Mina, what do you mean? You're going to live with me.
But I'm a high school student. I don't want to transfer schools now. Moving is a hassle, you know. then Mom will find a house near your high school. I said it's fine. I'm used to living in this house, and I've decided to live efficiently.
My daughter looked lively and not at all anxious. Seeing her like that, I felt incredibly sad. Was I the only one who thought we were close? The reaction from my daughter was more shocking than being confronted with divorce by my husband. But it wasn't just me who was taken aback. My husband was also confused. Don't joke. Normally, a daughter lives with her mother. To get out with her?
Stop it. I said no. That's why I'm saying I'll live with Dad.
I don't care about that. You were close with Mary, weren't you? Why then?
But I told you moving is a hassle, and living with Dad is more convenient if I think about efficiency.
My daughter explained with ease, but my husband was not convinced. He kept yelling, "Get out with Mary?" But my daughter stubbornly shook her head. She continued to speak.
Herb your mom. I'll help you pack. It'll be faster if we do it, Tiga.
I can't understand her intentions at all. What is Mina thinking? I was in a state of confusion. Maybe I was the only one who thought we were close like sisters, and she never liked me from the beginning. I started to think pessimistic thoughts, and tears welled up in my eyes. As I looked down to hide my face, my daughter spoke cheerfully.
You'll be okay. No, just bear it a little longer.
Huh, I froze for a moment, not understanding. But that confusion was cleared when my daughter explained a certain plan.
That's the way it is. So, Mom, hang in there by yourself.
All right. I get it, I said, energized now that I had my daughter as a co-conspirator.
All right. I get it.
I won't let my husband have his way with me. I will have my revenge. It's with revenge in my heart. I packed my things and left our home. I then went back to my parents' house, and a month later, I was able to rent an apartment. Once I told my daughter the new address, she started coming over after school. According to her, the plan is going smoothly.
It should happen soon.
Sure enough, one day, my husband called. Mina treats me like a housemaid every day. Huh, I froze for a moment, not understanding. But that confusion was cleared when my daughter explained a certain plan.
That's the way it is. So, Mom, hang in there by yourself.
All right. I get it, I said, energized now that I had my daughter as a co-conspirator.
All right. I get it.
I won't let my husband have his way with me. I will have my revenge. But with revenge in my heart, I packed my things and left our home. I then went back to my parents' house, and a month later, I was able to rent an apartment. Once I told my daughter the new address, she started coming over after school. According to her, the plan is going smoothly.
It should happen soon.
Sure enough, one day, my husband called. I pretended not to know what he was talking about and asked him, "Help you?" What on earth happened?
Mina treats me like a housemaid every day. I can't take it anymore.
It was exactly as I had heard. Since I left, my daughter has been forcing all the housework on him.
I have work, and yet she tells me to make proper meals and do the laundry every day. Even the cooking. It's too salty, or it's unthinkable to serve such terrible food to my daughter. I'm really at the end of my tether.
It seems my daughter is hurling back at him all the unfair things he said to me. What goes around comes around. Unaware, he turned to me for help.
Please take Mina back. I'll go crazy if things keep going like this.
Honestly, I would have no problem taking Mina, but if I agreed now, it would ruin the strategy my daughter worked so hard on. So I told my husband, why don't you talk to Mina about that? It's her choice to live with you. If you really want her to leave, why not negotiate with her? I hung up firm in my decision. This is the right thing to do. I'll just ignore my personal feelings for now and follow my daughter's plan faithfully. A week later, my daughter Mina moved into my apartment with a large sum of money.
We did it. Mom, our plan was a huge success.
Indeed, it's all thanks to you. Mina.
Yes, my daughter never intended to live apart from me. She had planned to make her father realize the hardship of housework and the efforts of a mother, and then make him understand what he had done.
Just when he finally cracked and begged her to leave, she had him agree to pay her a lump sum for child support until she became an adult.
That was my daughter's plan. Mina received $50,000 all at once from her husband, calculated at $1,000 per month until she reaches adulthood. And that's how she happily moved into my apartment. Actually, I must say, it's a terrifyingly clever plan that my daughter conceived, but the fact remains that her plan has relieved me of financial worries. As if that wasn't enough, my daughter brought even more valuable information. She handed me a voice recorder.
Just listen to it.
Urged by my daughter, I played the voice recorder, and there was the sound of my husband talking to someone else on the phone.
Oh, the divorce is all settled, but there's my daughter. No worries. I'll make sure she moves out. Millie, my daughter finally agreed to leave. Now I can live with Millie. Oh, yes. I love you too.
It was undoubtedly the voice of my husband talking to his mistress. Furthermore, the daughter showed me a picture of her father with an unknown woman. While you had Dad doing housework, I searched through his mobile phone. Oh, I saved the text messages with his mistress too. But want to see them? The daughter gleefully kept showing evidence of her father's infidelity. It's terrifying, but thanks to the evidence gathered by my daughter, I was able to claim compensation from my husband in the divorce proceedings. After contacting the lawyer to claim the compensation, the husband called.
Hey, what's this about compensation in the divorce proceedings now? We're already divorced. It doesn't matter who I'm involved with now, does it?
Then the daughter snatched the mobile phone from me and responded, "You know, Ed, aren't you supposed to be an adult? Did you know that if infidelity is discovered within 3 years, you can still claim compensation in a divorce proceeding even after the divorce?"
What? The husband was speechless on the other end. Not knowing this fact,
he had fallen into his daughter's trap. I ignored the ranting husband and blocked his calls, leaving the rest to the lawyer. Eventually, my ex-husband and his mistress had to pay me a lump sum for the divorce settlement. He remarried the mistress, but she seems to spend money like crazy. She used up all his earnings and maxed out his credit cards, leaving him in debt. That his reason for divorce was infidelity spread quickly at his workplace, and he seems to be looked down on by his colleagues. He was cheating even though he has a high school daughter. He was always playing the good husband at the office, huh? The rumor reached the higher-ups, and my newly promoted husband was demoted back to an ordinary employee. His salary dropped, and he's being berated every day by his spendthrift new wife. I even started to feel a little sorry for him at this point. As for me, I'm living happily with my daughter. I've saved all the alimony from my ex-husband for my daughter's college fund, and I'm supporting our life with a part-time job. We're not wealthy by any means, but my daughter doesn't complain, and we have lively days together. I'm really thankful for having her. Together, we can overcome any difficulties in the future. I felt truly grateful for this happiness.